Somerville. My name is Ed Halloran, and welcome to the Somerville Labor Show. I'm very excited about today's show. It's something that's been going on in Union Square for, well, I guess the past 6 years. The Union Square Neighborhood Council Community Benefits Agreement is a tentative agreement that may be happening. My guest today is a member of the Union Square Neighborhood Council and member of the bargaining committee that has been negotiating a community benefits agreement with the developer US2 for about a year now. The Somerville Labor Show believes it's paramount in keeping its viewers informed on the 15-acre redevelopment in the Union Square area and how it will affect our residents. Ben Bradlow, an elected member of the Union Square Neighborhood Council Board, who serves on its 7-member negotiating committee, is here with us today. Okay, so we are here with Ben Bradlow. Ben, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Ed. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm very excited about this. We have an announcement that is a tentative agreement between Union Square Neighborhood Council, and you guys have worked very, very hard on this. And as you guys take a look out here, I mean, about a week ago, we were talking about, we had cranes, we had a whole bunch of construction stuff going on here. And I'll tell you right now, this is just a tiny piece of things that are coming, and it's really going to be something. So can you give me a little bit of background about the Union Square Neighborhood Council? I know we don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but it's good for our viewers to know what the process was and how you got involved with it. So
the Neighborhood Council as an organization is kind of the culmination of a lot of activity by other organizations that led to this. So about 5 or 6 years ago, a group that's called Union United, which was actually a kind of an umbrella trying to unite a lot of different groups in the city, community groups and labor unions, came together to say that if there's going to be a huge development like this in the city, then the community should be able to negotiate directly with the developer to ensure that key concessions are made to mitigate especially the displacement that would come from this development. So the slogan was development without displacement. And over the past 5 or 6 years, that developed into a formally recognized body called the Union Square Neighborhood Council, which has a 15-member board that's elected by a membership, which consists of anyone who lives and or works in Union Square. I was a member of the founding board and then re-elected at the beginning of this year to the board.
So my question is, how unusual is this? Because sitting back and thinking about all of this, I say to myself, you know, it's really, I mean, I was always believing that developers come in, they do what they have to do, they develop the land. How much of an opportunity does the community have? What's their say? What do they have to say? But this is really a rather unique situation, isn't it?
So what you're describing is definitely business as usual.
Exactly.
This is not the only case where this has happened. I first became aware of this because of some work that I had done in the Bronx, actually when I first moved to Somerville in the early 2010s.
Okay.
But the biggest example of this is in LA, and most recently, the development of the Obama Presidential Library in Chicago is subject to a big conflict around a negotiation for a CBA. So this is not the only place, but it's part of a movement that's a national movement to do this kind of thing.
You know why I'm smiling? Because it's only in Somerville, man. It's only in Somerville, I'm telling you.
Only in Somerville, but not only in Somerville.
Well, you know what? It's just so, we seem to be always on the cusp of just about everything here. Cutting edge, cusp, call it whatever you want. That's my feeling about it. I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of what I see, what goes on in this city. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm talking about this today. So here's what I want to do. I want to set this up a little bit so the viewers understand what's going on here. We have headlines, Boston Globe, July 10, 2019, by Tom Logan, who wrote an article. And I believe he interviewed you in this article?
Yes.
Okay. So neighborhood group developers close to agreement on 15-acre Union Square project. The developers behind the long-planned redo of Union Square in Somerville might finally be making peace with their new neighbors. The real estate firm US2 and negotiators for the Union Square Neighborhood Council said this week that they have agreed in principle on a broad package of community benefits tied to the 15-acre project, including affordable housing, hiring rules, and public space. In the broader council, who whose members include people who live or work in Union Square, votes to approve the deal, it could kickstart more than a $1.5 billion worth of development around the MBTA Green Line station on the east side of Somerville. So that's huge. So it's basic. What we're seeing here is that this is coming to fruition. I mean, you guys worked on this for how long?
So the negotiations began almost exactly a year ago, and we met with US2 almost every week since either the end of July or beginning of August 2018.
Because I had Bill Cavallini in here,
Yes.
and I had Penny Taylor, and I had a Fraser in here last August. And they were just setting it up. It was just starting to happen back then. So I know that's exciting. What kind of support have you gotten from the residents on this and businesses?
So we have a broad range of participation in the council, both in the council and in the negotiation process in particular. So one thing that we did when we first, shortly after we elected the first board of the neighborhood council, is we hosted what we called CBA summits, where over 150 people came over 2 separate meetings to contribute ideas of what they would like to see in a community benefits agreement. We also had a wide range of organizations in the city, a number of labor unions contributing to us what they wanted to see in this agreement. And we produced a report out of those summits to say, this is going to be the guiding document for how a negotiating team pursues a negotiation.
What was the top 3 or 4, just off the top of your head?
So some of the key issues were affordable housing, and especially getting more affordable housing earlier in the development.
Sooner than later.
There was a lot of emphasis around ensuring dignified jobs on construction and organized labor participation, as well as dignified jobs and rights to organize for the permanent jobs. A lot of concern around environmental sustainability and open space. So those are some of the key ones. There are 8 or 9 categories in total that we.
And jobs, and more jobs, because that's all we think about here. Because wait, look, we're a labor show, man. We think about it all the time. So back in 2017, there was a major change. I have to say that. Which was the Board of Aldermen back then.
Yeah.
Okay, which is now the City Council. That seems to be going on more and more in every city.
Yeah.
City Council, which is appropriate. And I just want to know, how were they able to play a part in this to move it along? Because I know there was a parcel of land that needed to be transferred too. Can you give me a little background on that?
Right, so one of the really tough things with CBAs is you don't have very clear leverage. If you're in a labor union and you want to have a negotiation with the boss, in principle you can strike. It's a lot more complicated to have the equivalent kind of leverage.
Well, I have to kind of pause there because we can't, my
yes,
union
your
can't,
union can,
we
okay.
can't because we're breaking the law because we're a municipality, but that's cool. People
well,
get it.
private sector
People
unions,
get it, yeah,
but
that's cool. Yeah.
So we ended up, and I think actually the developer initially didn't really believe that we had much leverage to force a negotiation with them. But there were 2 key things. One, the developer had an agreement called a covenant with the mayor that included a quite vague provision around a community benefits agreement to be negotiated with something called a neighborhood council, which did not yet exist at the time that was written. And the second was due to what seems like a bit of an administrative oversight. There was a very small but critical parcel of land that the city council still had to approve as a transfer to the Somerville Redevelopment Authority, which would then go to US2 to begin construction on the first phase. And the new city council was very proactive in recognizing our neighborhood council as the, quote, neighborhood council that was envisioned in that covenant with the mayor. And the city council made it clear that it was not inclined to move quickly on this land transfer until there was a CBA in place. So that provided some pretty meaningful leverage for us to say, look guys, we need to come to the table and talk.
Where's that parcel land, do you know?
It's all this parcel that's kind of right outside and behind this building.
Dunkin' Donuts down
Yeah.
around and that whole
But
area.
it's
I'm not
a
talking
little
down the
sliver of that parcel.
Okay, but it's important.
Yeah.
It was a major component. I get it. So now that we have a tentative CBA, Community Benefits Agreement, between the developer and Union Square Neighborhood Council, in order to be assured that the developer follows the agreement, all right? What is the Union Square Neighborhood Council's demands for oversight and enforcement of the Community Benefits Agreement?
So that's one of the issues that we're still negotiating a bit, and why we're still calling it a tentative agreement.
Of course.
So I can't tell you exactly what it'll look like, but some of the key things that we want to make sure is that there's regular documented reporting on the provisions that exist in the CBA. So in other words, that the developer would be telling us, are they actually doing what they said they would do? And as well, committing to meeting regularly with residents so that there's a meaningful engagement.
Will this continue on as the project goes on as well? Do you think there would be some meetings going on?
That's the idea.
Oh, I like that. It's kind of like a labor kind of like what I have my little labor meetings with the city back and forth, and it's kind of one of those. I think that's really good. I think it's productive. You know? So how does the agreement become ratified? Who votes?
So there's a couple of steps actually to get to ratification at this point. So we have this in-principle agreement. We're negotiating the monitoring and enforcement mechanisms. And once we've completed that, as a negotiating team, we'll bring this agreement to the board of the neighborhood council, which will vote on whether to refer the agreement to the full membership for ratification.
Who is the full membership?
So the full membership is anybody who lives or works in Union Square. So when the agreement is referred to the membership, a two-thirds of the people voting must approve the agreement, which is a pretty high bar.
It is.
And when that rule was made in the formation of the neighborhood council, the idea was this agreement should rarely speak to a broad cross-section. This is supposed to be a community agreement.
You know, I am smiling, Ben, because my union has the same thing. It's a two-thirds vote,
Okay.
always has been. And there's been many, many times that people have tried to take that two-thirds vote away and have it a simple majority, which gives you 5.1 people are happy, 4.9 people are not. I think that was a very smart thing that the council did. I like that. The developer is going to be held accountable to fill its obligations to the community in some way, shape, or form. We hope. I mean, you're going to have this. You're going to ratify this, right? It's going to get ratified. We hope it will be. Once it's ratified, we want to make sure that what they say they're going to do will be done. And as we just discussed, there will be some type of oversight that will hold them accountable to do the things they need to do.
Yeah, and one thing that it's a bit difficult because I can't get into all the specifics right now because the agreement's not finalized, but we've tried in as many of the areas as possible to bring in existing public bodies as being involved in some way so that there's an existing institutional mechanism to ensure that it's not just accountability to the neighborhood council as an organization, but it's accountability to the city as a whole.
Got it.
So key groups there are the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the Jobs Creation and Retention Trust of the city, city council in certain instances. So there's a lot of accountability that's built into it.
There's a lot going on there, and I think they understand that, and I can appreciate that. Now that we know there's not a project labor agreement. I know that was one of the things that you guys were really pushing for. Can you just tell us what the project labor agreement was and what you maybe were trying to work on there a little bit?
So I can't tell you what the project labor agreement was because it didn't exist, but that was our starting point on the construction labor.
Okay.
And I think you know, and some of your viewers may be aware that the politics of construction labor in a lot of the Northeast is quite complicated. And we tried very hard to build a real united front, and I think that the organized labor participation that we did win in the end is a credit to our efforts to provide a united front. But I think that ultimately this project has to be seen as a step towards that goal of building a more united front when it comes to construction labor.
So on the show here, okay, we're always interested in jobs. I always say job creation is a huge part of what what I've always been involved in and what we've all been involved in, good paying local jobs for our residents. And are there any agreed proposals that you could give us, that residents are going to be probably have an opportunity to, maybe such as some apprenticeships and local hiring and things like that? That's something that's really important. I think that we've been talking about for a long time. Is there anything there that you think you can share with us on that at all?
So there's a lot of support for job training in Somerville with a particular focus on local job training and
Okay.
Getting local people involved in the jobs that
So
are
we want
coming.
to give our residents an opportunity here to have local people hired with good paying jobs.
Yeah.
I have to stress that, which is very important as well. And unions,
Right.
to come in and build.
So I wish I could be a bit more specific,
No, it's fine.
but I
I
can't
think
get
we
into
need
all the
to get-
specifics. We are anticipating a significant investment, like real resources, into job training for local people in this development, as well as what I think would be some pretty precedent-setting agreements on the role of organized labor, not only in the construction, but in at least some of the permanent
Well, this
jobs.
is a tremendous opportunity. And I believe that the neighborhood council and everyone involved, in my opinion, watching from afar, didn't want to let this slip through their fingers. I mean, you don't get that many opportunities like this, and I think that you guys have are definitely onto something with this hopefully with this tentative agreement. In a previous discussion that you and I had together, baseline, you mentioned organized labor baseline standards and workforce training, such as training apprenticeships. So we just talked a little bit about that. When you say baseline standards, what does that mean exactly?
Basically, we have tried to establish a baseline for not including disreputable contractors.
Oh.
So,
Of course.
it's not 100% labor participation, and when you have contractors that only work with labor, you can feel a lot more secure that you're getting a certain high standard in terms of the labor practices. But we did set some baselines in terms of what contractors have to meet.
Can you share any major proposals with me?
I really,
I'm looking for a scoop.
I don't like
I
to
need
hold back,
something.
but I
Well,
think
all right, so
I have a responsibility to hold
Oh,
back.
so I'll just continue to hammer away at you. I'm joking. Okay, so affordable housing.
Yeah.
My major concern, affordable housing, everybody should be thinking about that all the time. Is there any news on any relief in sight sooner than later? Is there anything going on that you can share with us as far as affordable housing coming? I don't know how you guys had it set up or how it's going to be constructed. Will we get any relief sooner than we normally would in the project, you think?
Right. So one thing that people don't always think about is development is never 100% good for all people. And one thing that has been very clearly documented, including in this proposed development, is that there are displacement impacts that are associated with it. So what we said is so the city has a 20% inclusionary zoning, which means that 20% of all housing that gets built has to be affordable.
Right.
Now, we said it needs to be more of that earlier in the development, and we've achieved that. So I can't get into the exact numbers,
That's okay.
but in the first phase of the development, you'll see a significant percentage higher than the 20%
Well, that's good news.
in the first
That's
phase.
certainly good news.
And what we said is, as long as there's some baseline for what will occur throughout the development, we really need to make sure that this affordable housing is coming earlier on to at least minimize the displacement effects. And to be quite honest, this is not going to 100% erase those displacement impacts, but it will make it less.
Well, it's been going on for so long now,
Exactly.
and it just keeps getting worse and worse, and we just can't keep up with the loss of seeing people leaving the city so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think you had to stop the bleeding somewhere, and it's going to take a long time. But this, like I said, in my opinion, it's just a tremendous opportunity. The other thing I'm going to ask you about is building with union labor. Okay, I've been told by some people that you can't build affordable housing with union labor. It's too expensive. So I expect, and I'm saying this because I would hope, that union labor will be involved in this project. And do you believe that union labor can build affordable housing at an affordable rate? I mean,
Look, it's not a matter of belief because there are empirical cases where it's happened. So, I mean, you can see it in Cambridge. There are cases where there's been union labor and affordable housing development.
I'm basically trying to debunk this whole thing because I've been told that it's impossible. I mean, I just have an issue with discrediting union labor at times because they think that they're going to charge so much money in these developments. I've spoken to Brian Doherty from the building trades. He's a great guy. I think he knows exactly what's going on. I think they've done some of that in Boston as well. I think it's incredibly important. And it's not that we don't believe that non-union people, even with that, prevailing wage is really important, as we know with the Clarendon Hill issue that's happening over there. We want to make sure that if we're not going to use unions, if for some reason you can't use in a particular area, that the prevailing wage will pay them the prevailing wage. Let's get it done. Let's get the job done. Let's get it done properly and safely.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would just say about that is for too long in this city, we have operated from a real scarcity mindset. So it's either union labor or it's affordable housing. It's either big development that's going to displace everyone, or it's nothing and you're anti-development. And what this experience shows is that you can begin to build real coalitions of people who maybe in principle want the same things, but have really struggled in the past to work together to get them. And if you really work at the organizing and negotiate in a real good faith, not just with the people across the table, but with the whole cross-section of your allies who you're supposed to represent, you can begin to get beyond some of that scarcity mindset and say, we need labor participation, we need affordable housing, we need real environmental standards that are going to reduce the carbon footprint. All of these things can go together. And I don't think this deal goes all the way to the ideal goal that we'd love to have. Well, that's the thing.
It's just the way it is, though. I mean, this is a negotiation back and forth, and there's so much give and take. I experienced this. I understand it. And it's difficult.
Yeah.
But the fact remains is that, once again, a tremendous opportunity.
Exactly.
To get something done here with the Green Line extension coming in, so many things going on right now. And I know how difficult it is for the residents to see this every single day and sit in traffic and everything else.
Yeah.
Hopefully the rewards will be great because we'll end up having something that's really fantastic here. Something that the community, this is a real community, something everybody can look at and say, look, they did it in Somerville, And people across the river over there in Cambridge, our good friends over there, they've done some good things over there too.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the opportunity that you guys are bringing us. When do you expect the CBA to be voted on? Do you have any idea when there may be a vote?
I don't know the exact date yet. In theory, it's possible that it could happen in August. Okay. My sense, especially because you want to have lots of participation and people are often away in August, that it may stretch into September. So right now we're saying late summer, early fall. That's all I can say right now.
So how about this? When would we begin to see this development commence? Let's say that we got a deal signed off in September. What is the phases, and when do you think that might begin to happen, from what you've been told, what you've heard?
It sounds to me like it could begin this fall. It depends on a few permitting and design review issues and planning review issues that weren't subject to the CBA. But that's what we had heard. And I think they basically want to work year-round once they get started because this subway is coming in. So.
Exactly. This is all going to happen all at once, and there's so much going on that it's making your head spin. Actually, it's crazy, but it's really exciting. One quote, I want to throw another quote out there from the Boston Globe too. It says here, while benefit packages for big developments are typically negotiated by city officials, and we talked about that earlier, In this case, Union Square activists successfully lobbied Mayor Joseph Curtatone to let the newly formed neighborhood council take the lead and to put the final package up for a vote of its membership. It includes a broad coalition of longtime Somerville residents, newcomers, business owners, labor activists, and environmentalists. And that sums up basically what the whole thing that we were just talking about. It's going to bring some jobs. We're hoping it's going to be some green things being done. Is there any news on anything green that we can look forward to?
Well, some of the things we discussed were a power purchasing agreement for renewable energy for the development, solar-ready roofs and things like that.
I think they've done that in New York City, actually. Too.
Yeah,
There's a lot going on over there.
some provision for electric vehicles, I think. So I may be missing some of them.
No,
but
it's fine.
Those are some of them. But I just want to speak to that quote that you just read for a second, because you know, a lot of people said with this deal before we started negotiating that the mayor and the city had gotten the best deal possible out of this development. And people who were pushing for a CBA were saying, no, this is not what we can accept. This is not the best deal that we will accept. And the city said that. Almost all of the city councilors who were then aldermen said that. And this process shows that it was clearly not the best deal possible. Almost everything that we negotiated for, except some of the labor provisions, could legally have been negotiated by the city. So I think that's a really important lesson, that when people tell activists who are pushing for a better deal for their communities and their workplaces that something is too unreasonable, is too radical, what was radical yesterday is common sense today. And that should be a lesson moving forward.
I love that. I think there's no doubt you guys took it. You had so many people involved here that it's almost impossible for failure when you have the groups. I'm serious. I mean, I've seen all of this. So we're going to show towards the end of this, we've got about, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 photos that we're going to show on the way out. And you will have an opportunity, you guys will have an opportunity to see all of these groups, all of these activists, all of these labor leaders, these business owners, people who have worked so hard to stay in this city that just don't want to be displaced, don't want to get pushed out. They love where they are. I grew up in this city. I grew up down the street over the hill. I know what Union Square represents and the diversity that it held. It's a fantastic place. And it's starting here. And to quote my good friend Greg Hill, sitting in the studio right now, he said, look, it's not just about Union Square. This is affecting the entire city and all the other stops that go all the way along on that Green Line extension. So it's a revolution, man.
And it's not just affecting Somerville. This is about development in the Boston area. And like I was saying earlier, this CBA movement is a national movement.
Well, you're setting a standard. The groups, Union Square Neighborhood Council has done a fantastic job, along with Union Night, along with Somerville Stands Together, and so many groups and so many people that I know that are friends of mine, and I'm really happy.
That's so important.
That's
so important.
So here's what we have. There's a T-shirt that I had gotten, and I love this here. It says, "No US 2 without us too, Somerville." So you probably have one. I'm going to give you one anyway, man.
Thank you.
I love that shirt.
It's fantastic.
And, it's just a great shirt, and they'll never miss you. So and the other thing that I want to do is I want to give you one more thing. If you ever get in trouble, you ever need to go to a rally, there's a SMEA shirt, and Unity, there is strength. That's
awesome.
yours. I think it'll fit you pretty well.
Yes.
Somerville Employees Association. There you go.
This is great.
Thank you, Ben. You got it.
Thank you, Ed.
I just want to say one thing. When we fight, what happens?
We win.
We win, and you guys, I believe you guys are on your way, okay? Over and out. Check out the videos. Check out Helen Trio with a little bit of music montage. Thank you so much.
Sail back home to my wife. Crash here 10 long years ago. So far from Ithaca, my else of me.